It was in Kansas, near Hutchinson, that it all started. It was almost 3 in the morning, clear skies, empty roads, and I was trying to stay focused so I wouldn't doze off. I was turning the radio dial out of boredom, until I tuned into a station I'd never heard before, FM 108.6. The number seemed strange to me, a little out of the ordinary. But I let it go. It was a voice speaking slowly, a little drawled. That old evangelical sermon tone, full of dramatic pauses. But the voice was mine. Exactly mine. I stood there, listening. The voice said things like, "And he who treads the path of repentance will see his past collide with his final judgment." It sounded rehearsed, as if it had been recorded in a studio. But the tone was accurate. My accent, my breathing, even my speech patterns. But I had never recorded this. Ever. My first instinct was to think of a deepfake or some radio bug picking up a signal from another frequency. But the more I listened, the more personal the voice began to say. She mentioned an accident I had when I was 17, which only my mother knew about. She told me the name of the girl who was with me and who no one else knew to this day. Then she told me about a recurring dream of mine, the one with the endless road and the truck sinking into black water. I started to sweat. I swear my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The weirdest thing was when she stopped for a few seconds and said, very calmly, "You're listening to this right now. And you know it's about you." I turned off the radio right away. But it turned back on. All by itself. Even with the button pressed out. And it came back on the exact second it had stopped. As if it knew where I had left it. The voice, or rather, I myself, kept preaching, now in a darker tone. It spoke of judgment of those who flee, of drivers without redemption, and cabins that become tombs. At this point, I began to wonder if I was really awake. I pulled over to the side of the road and turned off everything, even the truck. But the sound continued. As if the transmission was inside the cab. I stood there, in the dark, listening to myself talk as if I were someone else. And the worst part, every time the voice spoke, it seemed like it knew what I was thinking. I thought, "This isn't happening," and the voice replied, "Doubting doesn't free you from the sentence." I thought about starting the engine and leaving, and it said, "You can run, but the frequency is already inside you." I even covered my ears and started screaming to myself inside the cab. But the voice wouldn't stop. And it wasn't just coming from the radio anymore. It was coming from everywhere. I tried to find the exact frequency on the dashboard, thinking that maybe if I tuned out, everything would go back to normal. But the number 108.6 disappeared from the display. It was just a white bar now. And every time I turned it, more voices appeared. A child crying. People screaming for help. My father calling out to me. He died in 2009. It was as if every frequency had been taken over by some kind of broadcast that only I could hear. And in the background of them all, there was still my voice. Preaching. I drove again, trying to stay focused, but the radio kept turning on and off by itself, increasing the volume whenever I passed certain stretches of highway. I started to notice that I was always near crosses on the side of the road. Those makeshift memorials, full of flowers and ribbons. And every time I saw one of those crosses, the voice would say something like, "Someone else didn't hear." Or, "That was his last stop." The craziest thing was when I saw a brand new cross with my last name on it, and the voice just said, "This is your spare." I stopped dead. I got out, went to the side of the road, and looked closely. There was nothing there. Just tall grass. But when I got back to the truck, the transmission was louder. It sounded live now. It said, "You know this isn't the only steering wheel you've ever held. Or the only truck you've ever died in. I froze. Because no one knew about the crash I had in 2017, back in Flagstaff. It was bad, but I came out of it almost unscathed. Almost. The guy in the other truck died. And I haven't slept well since. But no one knew about that. When I tried to leave for good, the engine stalled. The dashboard blinked and all the needles froze. The radio turned on again by itself, with the display now red, showing only one word, confess. The voice came back, mine, and began listing places and dates. Each one was a point on the road where something had happened. A hit and run. A near accident. A day I almost fell asleep at the wheel. But the way he spoke, it was as if he had written it all down. As if he had followed me my entire life. I ended up falling asleep in the passenger seat out of sheer exhaustion. I don't remember blacking out. I only remember waking up to the radio blaring and saying, in my own voice, last chance. Last detour. Choose. I sped off, without thinking. And the more I drove, the weaker the frequency became. Until, after about 30 minutes, the sound disappeared. I turned off the radio. I threw my cell phone on the seat. And I promised myself I would never touch that frequency again. But the thing is, I never found it again. Not even after trying. I told this to 2 trucker friends. One of them laughed. The other turned white and said he had heard something like that once near Wichita. But he wouldn't go into details. He just asked me not to play with the radio in the middle of the night. And ever since then, whenever I hear someone preaching on some strange station, I change it right away. But there are nights, especially Tuesdays, when the radio turns on by itself at 3:08 in the morning. And for a second, before it turns off, I hear someone breathing. Just like me. I know it sounds crazy. It could be fatigue, hallucinations, anything. But to this day, on every stretch between Hutchinson and Dodge City, I keep the radio off. Because deep down, I'm afraid I'll hear myself again. And next time, I won't be able to stop talking. The first time I didn't even notice the exact time. I only noticed the flat right rear tire when I stopped at the gas station late in the afternoon. I thought it was bad luck. It was Thursday, it was getting colder, and the stretch of I-70 near Salina was a bit ruined. I changed it right there, without any drama. The following week, it happened again. Same tire. Same place. I started to think I had hit something on the asphalt, a nail, a piece of glass, I don't know. But the third week, I was looking at the clock. And it was 5:42 sharp. Again. Then I got that shiver you get when you realize something is wrong but still don't want to believe it. The following Thursday, I went prepared. I calibrated everything, checked it in advance, and drove calmly. When I saw that it was 5:41, my heart was already racing. 5:42 appeared on the digital dashboard. A second later, the system alert went off, 0 pressure in the same tire. I pulled over, and it was flat. But clean. No cuts. No visible puncture. As if it had flattened, all by itself. I started investigating. I replaced the entire tire with a different brand. Then I replaced the rim. The next week, I used a different tire pressure. I even switched tire positions. And yet, at 5:42 on Thursday, the problem was in the exact same spot. It was always in that stretch. Always in the same lane. I started avoiding I-70 in the farms. I took detours to US 36, then K-140. But it was no use. At 5:42, the tire blew. No matter where I was. On the 8th week, I stopped the truck at exactly 5:40. I turned everything off. I stopped on the shoulder. I wanted to see if the flat would happen even when I wasn't driving. And it did. I was outside, looking straight at the tire. It simply deflated, as if it were being sucked in from the inside. No sound, no puncture, no leak. It just went flat. That's when I noticed something else. Every time this happens, the radio makes a slight interference. Just a pop, like someone changing the station for a second. The part that made me the most nervous was when I realized it wasn't just the tire. After the 5th or 6th time, I started to feel like something was watching me every time I hit 5:42. I can't explain it. It wasn't a sight or a sound, it was a physical sensation. Like that chill down your back when someone stares at you from behind. Except there was no one there. The road was empty. And even stopped, with everything turned off, I felt a slight pressure in my chest, as if the air was getting denser. In the 10th week, I tried using cameras. I set up a dashcam pointed directly at the tire and a GoPro behind it. I left it recording from 5:30. When I got home and watched the footage, the moment of the puncture was simply not there. Both recordings jumped from 5 hours 41 minutes and 59 seconds straight to 5 hours 42 minutes and 11 seconds. It was like a hard cut. As if someone had erased that particular part of the footage. I swear I didn't pause it, there was no memory card error or anything. The cameras were intact. But that moment was gone. I got so paranoid that I left the truck in a yard for an entire Thursday, turned off, keys out, cameras on. I came back at the end of the day and there it was, the flat tire. Exactly 5:42 p.m., again. I started having nightmares about it. I dreamed that I was driving with no wheels, just metal, sparks flying and a voice on the radio saying, "You know why." I could never identify the voice. It was low, masculine, kind of slurred. Like it was coming from underwater. But the radio only showed blank frequencies. The last time I decided to go even further. I called a mechanic friend to come with me. I explained everything. He thought I was paranoid until he saw it for himself. We were standing there, both of us staring at the clock on the dashboard. When it turned 5:42, the tire blew out as if it had been stabbed invisibly. He went white. He said he had never seen anything like it. He left that night and never wanted to talk about it again. He texted me 2 days later, "Don't come back to I-70 on Thursdays. Not even for fun." After that, I started tracking down other reports. I went to trucker forums, CB radio groups, and even searched Reddit. And I found 2 similar cases. A guy from Missouri said that every Thursday, at exactly the same time, his radio would jam on a strange sermon. Another guy from Colorado reported that every Thursday he would see a figure standing on the shoulder of the road, faceless. They both drove along I-70 at some point. It was like there was something on the road marked at that time. Something fixed. Like a curse clock. I've thought about changing trucks. I even tried renting another one, with different license plates. But the problem persists. Same truck, same place, same time. And there's no point in running away. I've tried being in another state, Nevada, Nebraska, Oklahoma. Every Thursday at 5:42 p.m., a tire goes flat. Even when I'm not driving, when I leave the truck with someone else, it happens to them. One time I left the truck at the mechanic's and, without knowing it, he moved the truck into the yard at that time. And it went flat. He texted me, "There's something wrong with this thing." Last Thursday, I thought about doing it. I really did. I spent the day getting the truck ready. I drove to the exact stretch of I-70 and pulled over to the side of the road with the camera on, ready to record anything. When the clock turned 5:42, the tire didn't go flat. But the radio turned on by itself and a voice whispered, "Now that you're ready, we can go." I haven't had a flat since. But now, at 5:42, the radio turns on. Always. And says something new. Things I don't understand yet. As if it had accepted me. Or chosen me. I don't know what I did. I don't know what it means. But every Thursday, I pull over, turn everything off, and just listen. The radio speaks. Always with my breathing in the background. Like there's someone inside me, transmitting. And I swear this week, I heard my own name, not the one on my driver's license, but the one only my mother used when I was little. And that scared me more than any flat tire. It started with a blur of rain. It was about 6 weeks ago, on the Altoona-Harrisburg stretch of I-76. It was raining heavily, the kind of rain that makes windshield wipers seem useless. I was slowing down for safety, eyes fixed on the lane, when I saw a silhouette running along the side of me. At first I thought it was an illusion, like a reflection in the water or a strange shadow on a streetlight. But it wasn't. It was a horse. White. Running right next to the truck. And someone was riding it, with a sodden hood hiding their face. I thought about stopping, but common sense prevailed. It was insane, a horse in the middle of the rain, on a stretch of highway with no wide shoulder. And on top of that, following a truck going over 60 miles per hour. I stood paralyzed, just watching out of the corner of my eye. The animal didn't neigh, didn't breathe heavily, didn't make any sound. It just ran. And the rider didn't move either. He stood completely erect, firm, as if he were part of the animal. I spent a good 5 minutes like that, thinking I was going to wake up at any moment. When I looked straight ahead, there was nothing left. No footprints in the puddle, no sign of a figure in the rearview mirror. I continued on my way, shaking a little, but trying to ignore it. But then it started happening again. Always on Thursdays. Always when it was raining. And always at the same time, after 11 p.m. I tried leaving earlier, later, taking long breaks, but it always appeared. The third time, I saw it clearly, the horse had no horseshoes. It ran barefoot on the wet asphalt, and it left no marks. None. I started to write down the sightings. And I noticed a pattern, every time he showed up, something strange would happen afterward. A glitch in the dashboard. The radio turning on by itself. A distant knocking noise, no cars around. One night, the horse got closer to the truck bed and the outside of the window started to fog up, even in the heavy rain. When I wiped it off with my hand, I saw a figure in the side mirror. And I swear, on everything, he was watching me. As if he knew exactly who I was. After the fourth time, I started to notice more details. The horse was always the same. Same shade of dirty white, like freshly trampled snow. Same running rhythm, as if he were keeping time with the truck tires. And the rider, he never bowed, never reacted. But the weirdest thing was when I started to notice that his hood was the same as the jacket I wear in the winter. I thought it was a coincidence, until the sixth time he saw it, he turned his face, and I could see his jaw. It was mine. Only old. And with burn marks. That night, I almost ran off the road. I pulled the truck over to the side of the road, shaking, and stood there for about 20 minutes without being able to touch the steering wheel. The horse watched me from the road. Without blinking, without moving. And when I decided to start driving again, he ran off again, as if he had just been waiting. I don't know what that means, but ever since then, my body has known when he's coming. I have pain in my right shoulder, a ringing in my left ear, and the clock always says 11:17 p.m. when he shows up. I started seeing other things, too. People standing in the rain, staring at the truck. But when I passed them, it was just a pole. Or nothing at all. I started writing down names that came up on the radio, random interference with the names of people I'd transported in coffins. Yes, I'd transported remains a few times. I thought it was a coincidence, until the radio whispered, "You're his last freight." That made my blood run cold. Because it seemed like he was the writer. Or worse, me. Last week, I did everything I could to avoid the rain. I monitored the weather, changed routes, and stayed at a truck stop all day. But as soon as the clock struck 11 p.m., the storm started right there, right where I was. I saw the horse in the rearview mirror before I even heard any noise. But now there was something new, a second figure. Someone on foot, further back, in the same lane as the horse. As if he were following me too. I tried to speed up. But the speedometer got stuck. And the road seemed endless. Yesterday was the worst. It was raining hard, but differently. The drops made a strange sound on the roof, as if they were hitting wet fabric instead of metal. When the horse appeared, it didn't come running, it was already following me, side by side. The rider turned his head slowly, and when the hood fell, I saw my face, older, swollen, as if I had been pulled out of the water. My skin was gray, my eyes dull. But my mouth smiled. That smile we give in old photos when we don't want to look sad. The radio turned on by itself and my voice began to narrate the scene as if it were a memory. In the end, he understood. He was always coming back. Every night, every road, just a cycle. Then, silence. Only the sound of the horse. When I looked ahead, the road was covered in fog, but a curve appeared where there shouldn't have been. I knew that if I went there, I wouldn't come back. But the hand on the wheel was no longer mine alone. I felt a guiding force, gentle but firm. I pulled the truck over to the side of the road again and closed my eyes. I waited. After a while, the rain stopped. The road dried out as if someone had run a giant dryer over it. When I opened my eyes, the horse was gone. Not the figure. Not the sound. But a hoof print remained on the ground, imprinted in the asphalt, as if it had been melted in the heat. Since then, every time I see a curve at night, I wonder if it's real. And if I'm really going somewhere, or just reliving the route of someone who's already been there. I never told anyone about it again. Because every time I say it out loud, the radio turns on. And I hear the sound of hooves coming from the background. One step. Then another. Slowly. As if he knew I was talking about him. As if he was coming, to get me. It was near Barstow, on a dry and hot morning for the time of day. I was coming along I-15, a familiar stretch that I've driven about 100 times. But that night was different. The air seemed denser, and even with the air conditioning on, sweat was running down my back. Around midnight, I saw red lights up ahead, as if there was an unusual traffic jam in the middle of nowhere. When I got closer, I realized there were cars. About 20. All stopped. And no one inside. I thought it was an accident or an abandoned train. I pulled the truck over to my shoulder, grabbed the flashlight, and started walking to see what was going on. The strange thing was that all the cars were turned off, but their radios were on the same frequency, just a hiss. Some had their doors ajar, others intact, all covered in fine dust, as if they had been there for days. I looked at the hood of an SUV, completely cold. No brake marks, no signs of a fight, nothing. Just the line. Straight, well-positioned, as if everyone had stopped voluntarily. I walked to the 10th car, thinking I would find someone sleeping, feeling sick, who knows. But nothing. No sign of anyone. Just the radio's hiss. It started to make me feel really anxious. That feeling that you shouldn't be there. When I got back to the truck, my CB radio turned on by itself. And for a few seconds, between the static, I heard someone calling my name. My full name. Last name and everything. And the voice was similar to mine. My instinct told me to back up and get out of there, but my body didn't obey. I stayed. I put the car in first gear and followed the line. I can't explain why. It was as if a part of me thought that at the end of it all there would be some explanation. Some post, some officer, anything. But no. The line kept going on. Kilometers. Each car more covered than the last. The radio was getting clearer, as if the signal was getting cleaner the closer I got to the end. And there, I already knew, something was waiting for me. At some point, I lost track of time. My phone froze, the clock on my dashboard froze at 12:01 a.m. And I kept following the line. Not thinking. Just driving. I tried to pull off the road, but there was no shoulder. No verge. Just packed sand and rocks. As if the road had been shaped just for this, an endless line in the middle of the Mojave. No curves, no streetlights, no noise other than the static and my tires. At one point, even the sound of the engine became strange. As if the truck was moving effortlessly, or being pulled. That's when I started seeing the figures. The first thing I noticed were the silhouettes inside the cars. Before, they had seemed empty, but now, as the dust settled on the headlights, I could see shapes sitting there. Motionless. No movement of heads, hands, or breathing. Just shapes there, still. Like dolls. As if they were waiting. I looked to the side and saw a child in the back seat of a white sedan. But he didn't blink. He didn't react to the light. He just stood there watching me as I passed. And that made me speed up, as if I could still get off that road. The radio then issued a firm voice, with the same intonation as a dispatcher, last in line. Last in line. Get ready. At the same moment, the headlights of all the cars went out. One by one. Even mine. Everything went completely dark, only the sound of sand under the tires. And suddenly, the engine turned off by itself. It wasn't like it was running out of fuel or had broken down, it was like someone had turned me off. The dashboard flashed and a text appeared where the mileage should have been, "You've arrived." I got out of the booth slowly. My knees were shaking. I walked to the end of the line, which ended in a gentle curve to the left. The road there was dirt, narrower, like an improvised trail. At the end of this trail, the light from my emergency headlights illuminated an object on the ground. It was a simple wooden cross. Bent. Poorly secured in the dry earth. But I could read what was written in black pen, my name. Complete. And a date, the next day. That's when I realized that this wasn't a road. It was a countdown. I tried to pull the cross out of the ground. But it wouldn't budge. As if it had roots, or had been welded there for too long. I staggered back to the truck, desperate to get out of that place. I turned on the ignition, nothing. The radio turned on by itself and started repeating the phrase, "Last in line. Last in line." On a loop. My head started to throb, my vision was shaking. It was then that I realized the detail that destroyed me the most: the cross wasn't new. It was old. as if it had been there for years. And my name had already been there before I even passed by. After that, I blacked out. I don't know if I blacked out, fell asleep, or was blacked out. All I remember is waking up to the sound of a distant helicopter and the sun already high in the sky. It was parked at an abandoned gas station, more than 20 miles away from where I swore I was. No cars in the line. No crosswalks. No sign that that road ever existed. The truck was running normally, but the clock still showed 12:01. Since then, every GPS I've tried to use in that area has crashed. No map shows the line's trail. But I know where it starts. I tried to tell this story to my fellow travelers. Most of them laughed, saying it was exhaustion, heat, dehydration. But one, just a guy with a gray beard and sunken eyes, listened to everything quietly and then handed me a piece of paper. On it was just a handwritten number. I called and got voicemail. The recording said, "If you got this far, it's because you saw your name." I hung up right away. But since then, every time I pass through Mojave, I see a car stopped on the shoulder. Alone. With the radio crackling. And I'm pretty sure that last week I saw my own truck at the end of the line. With the engine off. And me sitting inside. Looking forward. I should have been in Idaho by that night. The route was clear, the load light, the weather forecast calm. But for some reason, even following the GPS, I kept coming back to the same curve on Route 12, near Packwood, Washington. At first I thought it was my fault, tiredness, distraction. I pulled over, checked the route, checked the dashboard. Everything was fine. But after the third time, the feeling of déjà vu became unbearable. It was like a broken record, and I was stuck on it. The curve was nothing special. A patch of woods on both sides, an old billboard on the right, and a cracked wall on the side. But every time I passed it, the billboard changed. First it was blank. On the way back, it said, "You passed this way." Then, "Not again." And finally, "Deal with me. You never left this place." I almost threw the truck into the ditch in anger. It didn't make sense. I had been driving for hours. The gas tank was running low, the radio was updating the time. But I didn't move. Things got even more sinister when I saw the same oil stain on the asphalt. Always in the same position. The same energy drink wrapper crumpled on the shoulder. A dry branch in the same spot. Everything exactly the same. The road seemed to reset. But the world around me kept going. The sky changed, the clock ticked. And I just kept going around in circles, even trying to get out by other routes. I changed the GPS, made U-turns, tried shortcuts, everything led back to that curve. The fixed point. I started to lose track of time. I would sleep for a few minutes, and wake up sweating, with the feeling that someone was watching me. One night, I stopped the truck on the side of the road and walked to look at the billboard. It was just rotten wood, nothing electronic there. But every time I walked away and came back, the message changed. And it became more direct. "You're not driving. Then, we're just waiting for you to understand." The road was telling me. I just didn't know what. On one of the laps, I decided to time the time between turns, as if I could prove that I was moving in a straight line. I clocked 26 minutes. But when I turned the turn again, the stopwatch still showed 26 minutes, exactly. I tried again. Same result. But the clock on the dashboard kept going. Time passed, but the interval between one point and another was always the same. Too perfect. Too artificial. The kind of thing that only makes sense in a nightmare. Or in a simulation. I stopped trying to leave and started observing. I noted details. A crow would always land on the same tree. A red light would flash behind the forest. Sometimes I could see a figure standing among the trees. It didn't move, but it seemed to get closer with each turn. And now the billboard said things I'd never told anyone. You lie to your mother. You saw that accident and left. You deserve to be here. That was when I felt a chill run down my spine. Like I'd been judged. On the CB radio, I began to pick up low voices. Some were crying. Others were screaming. One whispered, "The curve is your prison. Then, you died in it. You just don't understand it yet." The GPS stopped at 0.0.0. And the screen went black. I tried turning everything off, and the dashboard just stayed lit, as if I wasn't even in control anymore. As I rounded the curve again, a figure appeared on the shoulder. It looked like me. Same cap, same jacket. It looked at me, raised its hand, and disappeared as I rounded the curve. I started screaming alone in the cabin. Not out of fear, but out of desperation. It was as if no one else existed beyond that. No calls worked. No radio responded. The truck kept going, but I couldn't feel the engine vibrating anymore. It felt like I was floating. Stuck in a replay. And with each lap, the billboard got fainter, as if telling me, almost there. Almost what? I don't know. But I was starting to accept it. On the next lap, I decided to do something different. I stopped the truck in the middle of the curve and got out. I remained in total silence for about 5 minutes. Nothing moved. No wind, no animals, no noise from the bushes. Just a low buzzing sound coming from the direction of the billboard. When I looked at it, the wood was completely dark, as if it had been burned. But the phrase was there, carved deeply, "Accept it. You never left here." And I felt that as true. As if the world outside that curve was just a memory. Or an invention. I backed away, stumbling, and saw something in the middle of the road. It was a mirror, the size of a door. It was lying on the asphalt, without a frame. When I got closer, I didn't see my reflection. I saw the curve. Empty. No truck, no one. Just the road spinning in a loop, in an infinite void. I tried to step on the mirror, it sank like water. But I backed away. I felt that if I crossed it, I wouldn't come back as myself. Maybe that was what they wanted. For me to give up. For me to accept the role of just another one in the cycle. I got back in the truck. I tried to accelerate until the engine blew up. Nothing. I tried to stop and wait for the sun to rise. It didn't rise. It just stayed in that eternal dawn. A gray sky, without stars, without change. The clock's hands turned, but time didn't really pass. And I remained there, at that fixed point on Route 12, like a broken record, spinning in silence. Waiting for. I don't know what. Or maybe no one was waiting for me. Just me. Since then, I've stopped fighting. I just let the truck roll. I make the turn. I pass the billboard. I listen to the radio. And I wait for the next lap. The one where maybe the billboard says, "Now you can go." But until today, that has never happened.